What's up, everybody? This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast coming at you, courtesy of Cincy Jungle and its podcast network. We have a couple of special guests with us today, one of which is Mr. Jason Garrison, who you've recognized from the 3 and Out podcast. Jason, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm tired. We got a new puppy for the kids for their birthday, and he's keeping us up throughout the night. But it's good. It's a good reason for lack of sleep. That's what it is.
What kind of pup is it again?
Golden Retriever.
So tons of energy, I would assume, correct?
Yes, tons of energy. And my plan was to bring him home and name him Joe, and train him.
Did that come to fruition?
I was vetoed because the kids both wanted to name him Biscuit. So Biscuit okay. It is.
Great name.
Well, yeah. I got to tell you, maybe this wasn't the right week to name him Joe anyway.
Yeah.
His namesake based on some things there. Well, it's always a good idea to name him after Joe Burrow. We know that, but regardless. But joining us for the first time on the show, long overdue. He has recently joined us over at Cincy Jungle on the writing side, hoping to do a little bit more on the podcast side. You've seen him on WNKY TV, Mr. Patrick Carey. How are you, sir? Welcome to the show.
Man, I'm great. It's good to finally be here. You know, we've tried for a few weeks to make it work. It hasn't worked out, but super stoked to join. And, you know, I've always told Anthony that I've watched him for years, so it's cool to finally join the podcast.
Anthony, you're on mute, buddy.
I thought I was unmuted. I said, I appreciate that, Patrick. Here I am. You're sitting here telling me about how you watch me, and I'm sitting here making rookie mistakes here. I said, I appreciate that, Patrick. Yeah, you're making me feel a little bit like an old fart around here, but that's all right. I appreciate it. I appreciate your support. We are super stoked to have you aboard Cincy Jungle. You, Jason, Markham, and many, many, many others comprise a great slate of writers, and hopefully, like I said, we can get you contributing more on the podcast. We appreciate it. I have to apologize to our listeners. I know, quite a few of you do tune in for us for either, kind of to break down some breaking news or recent news, that sort of thing. We had every intention of going live, myself or others, this weekend to talk about a number of different things. Unfortunately, some family scheduled things and different things prohibited me to do that. Usually we are right on top of that, but so I'm sorry to our listeners that we weren't on top of some of this stuff this time around. Usually we're right on top of it, and we're going to keep bringing you all kinds of different content. That being said, I do want to get to a lot of different stuff. And of course, the big story, as we all know, is Joe Burrow's calf injury. Now, when I was taking off Friday, and so I obviously caught the news and caught bits and pieces since over the next couple of days. My impression was, and I want to get both your guys' take on this. My impression was that you look at him practicing on Friday when he sustained that injury, he had a calf sleeve on the area in which he sustained the injury. And so at least I was led to believe that there was maybe, and I don't know that this has really come out so much, but there was some sort of an issue going into that practice, whether it was a little bit of a twinge or a pain or whatever was going on there. That caused him, and obviously the humidity and the heat, right? So maybe that caused him to put that on and avoid some cramps, that sort of thing. And then, of course, he rolled out on a play, and the thing just, kind of strained on him. And so that was my impression. Patrick, I'm going to let you bat lead off on this one here. I know you both have written some stuff on Cincy Jungle about the injury and other things going on at training camp. So, Patrick, talk to us a little bit about your impressions of it and what was coming out Friday.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that you hit on was that he was already wearing a calf sleeve which helps with maybe some discomfort he was already having. So the question that I had instantly was, has he already aggravated it, and did he re-aggravate it, almost making it worse in that specific play? I think that was the biggest question. And obviously, like you said, with the heat and humidity, it makes your muscles much more tense. And the concern I had instantly was, how long has he had this issue? And with that length of it, did it make it worse in that very moment?
So my concern, Jason, was that if he did have something going into this, Joe Burrow, his mindset. He's kind of got the, someone I talked to recently made the comparison of him to actually, of all people, not Peyton Manning, not Tom Brady, but actually Kobe Bryant, and based on his mindset and approach to the game. Yeah. And which I found interesting, and we may or may not talk about that on Wednesday this week. But regardless of that, the point is he's just got that I'm going to go, 100% all the time. And so, Jason, my worry was that I think the narrative going into this camp, and maybe Joe, as much as he likes to tune stuff out and kind of live in his own, tunnel vision type of world, there's probably in the back of his mind, hey, I haven't had a normal training camp. I haven't had a full training camp, whether it's COVID, my knee, the appendix, any of that. So if I got a little bit of cramps or twinge or whatever, doesn't seem that serious on Thursday after practice, I'm going to push through it and I'm still going to play. Maybe I'll go a little lighter on Friday. I don't know if that was his case. It wouldn't surprise me if that was the mindset. But as we sit here now, I'm going, oh, man, that's just a crusher for not only all of us, but for Joe Burrow too. Yeah,
and I don't know if that was the mindset is, I've had some cramping issue with my calf, and I'm gonna, I should sit out, but I don't want to sit out. I don't know if that's what it was. Either way, based on the tweet that I just saw from Mike Petraglia, it says Joe Burrow is in the locker room at his locker with a sleeve on his right calf, walking with no limp. So I don't know if he's going to be back sooner. I don't want him to be back. I just want to ease him back in. He doesn't have to play in the preseason as far as I'm concerned. But I wouldn't be surprised if he found out that he maybe should have sat, for a day and didn't want to. So.
Well, yeah, I'm going to pull up the tweet here as well from Mike Petraglia. I guess what the next thing, and we'll get to some other news and notes and stuff too. I don't want to linger too long on this because this has been obviously a lot of headlines. And here's kind of the key thing here. Joe Burrow's in the locker room at his locker at Trags, Trags, who does a great job covering the Cincinnati Bengals as a beat writer here. Joe Burrow's in the locker room, and this is as of Monday afternoon. At his locker room with the sleeve on his right calf, walking with no limp. So that, of course, is great news. So then we had the news over the weekend, Patrick, that Zach Taylor comes out and says, hey, it's going to be several weeks. I guess my question is, when you see and read and hear about the injury, when you see what you saw at training camp and, the cart comes out, and then, of course, you hear the word several in terms of weeks being out, for Joe Burrow, what does several mean to you? When you hear that, what is your level of expectation in terms of amount of time missed by Joe Burrow?
I think the craziest part about all that, obviously outside of the Joe Burrow injury in that practice, was the debate that was being had on Twitter with how many people were breaking down what several meant. And I think for me, several is 3 or more weeks, I think is what it would be. And kind of like what Jason just said, I don't see any reason for him to need to rush back. He's done just fine missing these training camps, unfortunately. I hate to say that, but I don't see him playing in training camp anymore, and I don't see him playing in preseason.
Jason, what does several mean to you? I mean, several could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, all the way up until week 1. If I'm sitting here saying that, there's my little guy back there. If I'm sitting here looking at this, you can see the source of the noise. But if I'm looking at this personally, I don't see 6 weeks all the way up to week 1, knowing who Joe is and knowing the thinking about the severity, or maybe even, I hate to say it this way, a little bit of lack thereof. This isn't a tear, this isn't an Achilles thing, this isn't all that. I kind of say, hey, maybe the first 2 preseason games, most of training camp, but then maybe some work if everything goes according to plan, maybe some work in that final preseason game to knock off some of that rust and go from there.
So this is embarrassing because I got kind of called out on Twitter a couple times because to me, and I don't know if I was just raised wrong or if I forgot, but several to me has always meant like 12. And now I know that that's not right, but I always thought like a couple is 2 or 3, a few is 4 or 5, and several is 12, like a dozen. And I'm so glad that's not the case, because when I first saw it came out that he was going to miss several weeks, I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to have to go sign Carson Wentz and all this stuff, and it's going to be a mess. But that's not the case. Several obviously does not mean 12. It means 3 or 4. But yeah, I would not be surprised if he was capable of playing in the preseason the whole thing, and he just doesn't. But yeah, I think that, 4 or 5 weeks, maybe even less than that, especially if he's walking around without a limp now, because the last I heard before that is he had a crutch. Yeah, 3 or 4 weeks, something like that, and then maybe get some action or a series or 2 in the last preseason game, maybe. But it's not necessary. A Super Bowl and losing the AFC Championship game to the eventual Super Bowl winners on a last-second field goal with no work in the offseason or in the preseason. I don't know if preseason is necessary for him. It's nice, but I don't know if it's necessary.
Your amount of worry, and I'll get to you too on this, Patrick. Your amount of worry on the slow start thing and that narrative, given this injury and him missing time in training camp. Let's hope everything goes. He's going to play week 1, all that kind of stuff. I think that's the expectation. That's what everybody's hoping for and expecting. But let's look at this and go, okay, well, what about the slow start? Because last year maybe you could afford it a little bit. You dropped the one against Dallas. That's an interconference game. Of course, the first game was just like whatever. That was a weird thing. But this year, again, you got 2 AFC North games right out of the gate. And so to me, you got to take care of business. So this slow start thing can't afford to be had again. I mean, are you worried about that? Or is it now Joe Burrow year 4, some of these guys year 3, year 2, year 4? You know what I mean? I don't know. Are you comfortable if he does miss most of training camp, some or all of preseason?
I mean, I am and I'm not. I would like to. It's obvious that last year the offense was not firing on all cylinders at all in the first couple games, and they barely lost those 2 games. But this year, playing the Browns and the Ravens, I'd really like to get them. I'd like them to get off to a hot start. And if that means that Joe Burrow is going to have to get back on the field and do some more work, then that's what that means, and I'd be fine with that. If they're saying we have to take it easy and, we don't want to risk any further injury, if it's a grade 1 strain or something like that, and they're saying, hey, we don't want it to be a grade 2 or grade 3 heading into the season, then I could possibly see a scenario where they say, those first 2 games, if we win, great. If we lose, we'll make up for it later. But being 2 AFC North games, I'm hoping that he gets some work in and then they come out, firing, which was the opposite of what they did last year.
Yeah, Patrick, for me, I think the big difference this offseason, whether or not Joe Burrow gets extensive work or not, is the cohesion along the offensive line. You do bring in technically, 2 new starters, I guess, if you count the right tackle. Let's say Jonah Williams wins that job. But then you've got Orlando Brown, new guy, but these are still veteran guys who are playing. One guy maybe playing a little bit of an unnatural position, but the last year you're talking about a complete overhaul, and you had the quote from Ted Karras earlier this offseason saying we're quote unquote miles ahead of where we were last offseason, I guess, in terms of cohesion. That's one thing that kind of keeps my mind at ease a little bit with all of this.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I don't think there's any debate that this is hands down the best offensive line Burrow's seen since joining Cincinnati. But kind of going back to what Jason said, I don't think Burrow absolutely needs to have these series going into the season, but you worry because of how it started last year, going against the Browns in Cleveland, and then your home opener is against a hungry Baltimore Ravens team. So there is that worry in the back of your mind of, okay, if Burrow comes out slow, are we going to start 0-2 right out of the get-go in the AFC North? And that is what I think everybody's biggest question is. But going back to the offensive line, I think if Burrow can get healthy and be just fine, this offensive line is going to make a massive impact on whether he starts slow or not.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, the other thing that I think may give, you mentioned a name, Jason, of Carson Wentz, and a lot of people were talking Teddy Bridgewater and all these other players, coming in and making sure there's a guy, if you need a starter right now, it's going to be one of these veteran guys. Well, they went and got a guy, but it's not necessarily one of the big name guys. I looked up, I read up on Reed Sinnett, I guess, a little bit. And, I was trying to find some correlations. He was with the Eagles, but he was there before Press Taylor left. Zach Taylor's brother was there. So I think there wasn't overlap there. You guys can maybe fill in some of the blanks there. I didn't see a ton of, the NFL is a bit of a who league, who you've played for, all that kind of stuff. Maybe you guys, and I'll start with you again, Patrick, maybe you guys can fill in a little bit more on this. I couldn't really see a ton, at least a very first blush research in terms of connection there, aside from maybe a guy they liked in the XFL, correct? A guy that they feel that, could be a developmental guy behind Jake Browning, et cetera.
Yeah, I don't know much about him. I think that this was a signing to kind of show that they're not too stressed about Burrow going into week one. I think it's more of just a competition signing and giving somebody else an opportunity to kind of put some pressure on the guys that they have in the building right now. And that was kind of my takeaway from that signing is, okay, they're not going to sign a big name guy. We don't have to really worry about, as of right now, Burrow missing a few weeks in the season because, again, I see this being a signing to maybe be a competition spot for that second or third string position.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I mean, had they brought in or even entertained the idea, like bringing in Carson Wentz or Teddy Bridgewater for just for a workout, it kind of would have freaked me out a little bit. But the fact that they just kind of sat on their hands and said, we're not worried about it. Bringing in Reed Sinnett,
right?
Likely a camp body. Maybe he competes for that emergency quarterback spot. You know what I mean? That's about it. And by them just doing that, I think that it's clear that they're not concerned. So I'm not concerned.
Yeah, and there is also, I think, this year is the new, if I'm not mistaken, there's the new rule of the active the extra quarterback on the roster, active quarterback rule. So, I think they're kind of maybe tinkering with options on that front too. So, yeah, I mean, this is not that sorry, Reed Sinnett, I'm sure you're a great player, but not that I, not that I'm doubting him or his abilities. It's more just like, with all the veteran options, the guys who have started a number of games in the league, you kind of say, okay, well, maybe that's where they would have gone for an emergency, or they feel that great about Trevor Siemian as well, right? Yeah. I mean, they liked that signing when they made it. I think that was a smart signing as well, especially now with hindsight being 2020 and dealing with everything that everybody's dealing with this Joe Burrow injury.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. I looked up Reed Sinnett's RAS score, and it's incomplete. There's really nothing there, and I'm trying to find like a 40 time, and I'm having a 4.84. Okay, so the only other thing that I thought of is possibly maybe they brought him in here and maybe they put him on the practice squad, something like that, and he's there. We got to play Lamar Jackson twice a year. We like the defense to go up against someone who can run the ball a little bit, something like that. But I don't know. I don't really know anything about Reed Sinnett outside of the fact he played at Georgia Tech and in the XFL for a while. I didn't even know he was with the Eagles. So obviously,
I think he had a cup of coffee there. And like I said, there wasn't because I was looking for maybe a Press Taylor, crossover or something like that, and it was right. Kind of passing ships, right? I mean, it just they missed each other at that area, so I just kind of was looking for a little bit more. We got some questions here. You guys have been a little closer to the stories, especially the last couple of days. Terrell Basham's injury. Do either of you have some insight on Basham's injury? Was that today or was that I can't remember.
No, that was last week, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Patrick, I'm going to defer to you. I really don't have any information on Basham.
I have not looked in depthly on that much at all. I got nothing for you on that one.
Okay, well, sorry about that, Brian. Brian's asking about that. We'll look a little further into that.
Now, see if I can get some more information.
We'll look a little further into that. Obviously, that not being front headline news probably isn't something super devastating. I do remember reading that over the weekend. Like I said, my weekend was a bit of a whirlwind, so I apologize. But we'll try and find some more info and updates on that for you. And then, of course, guys, back together Saturday. Were either of you there in person for this great event? I know you had to have tickets and all that kind of stuff, unless you're a super mega VIP, which we all are. You know, the three of us are big VIPs, big wigs. But I was not there. But I don't know. The latest and greatest from that. I know obviously that's kind of, you know, it's a glorified practice or scrimmage, right? It seems as if though, guys, the rookie DJs are really shining in this year's camp. DJ Ivy and Turner making some plays. Turner's been making plays with the twos quite a bit, and Ivy has a couple of interceptions and a few pass breakups and drills and scrimmages and whatnot. So that is good to see.
Yeah. I was not there. I had tickets. I was going to go. I ended up giving them away I ended up giving them away because we got news that we could go get this puppy. So that's why we weren't there. But
priorities, Jason. Priorities.
I know. But no, but like what you said about the DJs, I think we all knew DJ Turner. I really liked that pick. I didn't really know anything about DJ Ivy coming out of Miami. He's got some long arms, and he seems to be, you know, physical. Seventh round picks, it's always kind of a crapshoot whether they're going to make the team or not. But I mean, based on what I've seen so far, I absolutely think that DJ Ivy is pushing guys like Alan George and guys like that out of their spots and possibly taking that spot where he'll be a special teams contributor and a backup cornerback or you know, a cornerback in, you know, dime packages or prevent, you know, stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I agree with Jason. I think if one thing that we've all learned over the last few years is an underrated position for depth is the cornerback spot, and you need all the depth that you can get there. And if you can get some quality time out of a 7th round guy like DJ Ivy that he brings to the table to light some fire under the other guys, I mean, I think that's absolutely massive. And you know, you never know how injuries are going to roll out throughout the season. And if you have some guys that have shown that they could potentially step up, and they're practicing against guys like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Irv Smith, Tyler Boyd, all these guys that are quality guys that they're getting reps against in practice. And, you know, having those guys for game time moments when they need them the most is massive.
Yeah, and iron is sharpening iron, apparently, because Jamar Chase is going up against CTB and Turner in various capacities. And the good news, guys, is even without Joe Burrow in the lineup, not saying he's replaceable by any means, but these guys, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, against starting cornerbacks, against high-end cornerbacks at Back Together Saturday and other practices are showing big plays still being made with a backup quarterback getting the ball. So, again, there's interviews from that on the NFL Network and whatnot, where Zach Taylor is saying, you know, the expectations, Burrow's going to be ready for week 1, if not sooner, that sort of thing. But the good news is the offense doesn't seem to be missing obviously they're missing a beat, but they're still making plays. There are still the ability to make plays and move the football down the field because of the other weapons on the team. Right.
I think part of that is because you have the best group of wide receivers in the league, the best 3 starting wide receivers in the NFL. But you also have a much improved offensive line, and obviously the quarterback can't be touched right now, so I'm sure that makes it. I know for me, if I knew I couldn't be touched, I could probably make a throw or two. But
we should put that to the test, man. We should put that to the test.
No, we shouldn't. We shouldn't. Just let me say it and not prove it. But
we'll call up the Bengals and see if we can arrange something. You know,
I don't want to do that at all. But you know, I think that having the best 3 wide receivers help, having a much improved offensive line helps. I've seen some footage of Irv Smith Jr. making a couple really acrobatic catches. I think he's going to be the best pass catching tight end that Burrow's had in his young career. But it's just a ton of talent, just loaded on talent on offense. And even with a backup quarterback, it's not like these guys are, you know, high school quarterbacks, and they're professionals. They know what to do. It's just going to be that much more deadly with Joe Burrow. So, but the wide receiver, having the 3 best wide receivers in the NFL is just going to make guys like Cam Taylor-Britt, you know, he's got a year under his belt, but he's young. But DJ Turner, DJ Ivy, Chidobe Awuzie, it's just going to make them better throughout the year. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the most exciting things I saw from Back Together Saturday was seeing Irv Smith kind of show his athleticism, because his career's just been drowned by injury. And if the Bengals, if any team can get a 1-year guy a quality season, it's the Bengals. You look at Hayden Hurst and you bring in now Irv Smith. If he can stay healthy, I think he could potentially be that swing guy for this offense that can even take it to a bigger level. Also, it helps to have the best offensive line for a team, but still seeing that excitement from Irv Smith, I think is really fun to see.
Yeah. Talking some Bengals updates, news updates from Friday and up to currently on Monday as we get set to, I guess we put August 1st on the timeline. Some people will be watching this August 1st, depending on when you're watching it. But we have a lot of people joining us live through various platforms. Thank you for tuning in live. Thank you for listening after the fact. I'm Anthony Cosenza with the Orange or Black Insider. You're also seeing and hearing the voices of Jason Garrison from the 3 and Out podcast. He does that weekly on Cincy Jungle and the OBI YouTube channel. And of course, Patrick Carey, who you've seen on the tube, WNKY, and in writing now on cincyjungle.com, and hopefully more so on our shows and various shows that we do for Cincy Jungle and on this channel. And of course, if you are new here, welcome. You can subscribe down by Patrick and that Cincy Jungle logo in the bottom side of the screen there. Yeah, there you go. I always do the same thing too. It's like, I know, yeah, it's somewhere down there. Click that. There. Click subscribe, click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. We do put out some pre-recorded content, but we do a lot of our shows live. So if you want to join us live, you got to click that bell to be notified when we go live and when new content is available in general. Give us a thumbs up if you like what we're doing on the YouTube side. Give a thumbs up to the Cincy Jungle Facebook page because all kinds of stuff is either streaming there, stories are there. And of course, you got to subscribe to the Cincy Jungle podcast channel where you can get this show, the 3 and Out show from Jason, some stuff that, I don't know, maybe we'll have Patrick be doing for us as well. And then, of course, Talking Football with Bengal Jim and Friends, Coach Speak and Chalk Talk from Matt Minnick. We appreciate all the support. Okay, self-commercial aside, let's keep it rolling a little bit. We'll get to a few more stories and hop on out of here. Patrick, how surprised were you that on Friday, before the Joe Burrow news took over the entire planet, how surprised were you that the extension that the Bengals agreed to first was Trey Hendrickson, a guy who tacked on another year to his contract and added, I think it was $5 million to this year. Initially, first blush, it seemed like it was a little bit about year one cap flexibility for these extensions, but maybe not so much. Maybe it was just rewarding a really good player, maybe some other ancillary benefits for the team as well down the road. But it just seemed like, hey, this guy's awesome. We need to pay him and keep him around for at least another year.
Yeah, I don't think anybody expected the extension announcement to have Trey Hendrickson's name on it. But at the same time, I don't think anybody was complaining that it was Trey Hendrickson's name. And, now he's going to be on the other side of Sam Hubbard for the next 2 years. And I believe both of their contracts will now end at the same time. So, they've played so well together. You almost have to keep them together. And Trey Hendrickson's done nothing but produce for Cincinnati. He's fought through injuries and all that kind of stuff and still gotten to the quarterback. And I feel like the depth at the pass rushing position has only continued to get better, which will in turn help Trey Hendrickson improve even more. So, yeah, the excitement surrounding that is definitely deserving of not going unnoticed, even with the Burrow injury.
Jason, your surprise level of this contract. Again, it's rewarding a good player, but here's the thing, and we're going to pull up a story in just a second that's related to this. The Bengals right now have really shifted their mindset as a team and how they operate, wherein they don't really like to put contracts out there to players that are going to be into their 30s. That's going to be the case here with Trey Hendrickson, but I guess in some forms and in some ways, there are always outliers and reasons why you want to give some of these guys the extra deal to keep them around longer.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised. It was kind of on, I think Joe Goodberry had put on there, like, there's an extension coming. It's not the name that you're expecting. I think I saw that on Twitter before it came out. I thought it might be DJ Reader. He's entering his contract year. But I'm stoked. I'm very happy that Trey Hendrickson, he's led the team in sacks the last 2 seasons. He's been a great 4-3 edge rusher for the Bengals. He's like you said, they don't, typically extend guys when they're going to be in their 30s, but they just drafted Miles Murphy, who might help spell Trey Hendrickson a little bit, where he's not on the field as much, making him more effective later in the season and helping his career last a little bit longer. So I'm very excited. Just keeping him here, spreading that cap hit out over another year, helping them possibly. Well, Burrow's going to get extended either way, but helping them maybe keep T. Higgins in town, along with Jamar Chase when he's eligible next year.
Yeah, and I think who was it that said it here in the live chat here? Jerry Lowell. saying Hendrickson won't be gassed like he was last year with all the depth. And that's the hope. Not only him, but Hubbard. I mean, that's the hope with these guys bringing. I mean, and it's not just, normal, kind of, I guess, I don't know what you would call it, wear and tear, or just normal fatigue based on a regular. I mean, these guys have played extensive postseasons. I mean, you're tacking on an extra 3 or 4 games to the regular season. And, oh, by the way, I mean, it's like, hey, since you're productive, we're going to give you the line. And also injuries to Larry Ogunjobi to kind of affect the rotation along the line. I mean, we got to get productive pass rushing snaps where we can. And so, to Jerry's point there, I mean, that's kind of been the issue with Hendrickson, I guess, and Hubbard as well. I mean, they've still produced and made big plays in the postseason, but you could tell towards the end, man, the volume of snaps has really kind of shown. And then, of course, here you mentioned his name, Jason. The Bengals have not approached DJ Reader on a contract extension yet, and he's a guy who is entering a contract year, a guy who's had some injury stuff, but when he's in there, he is a dominator, to say the least. And DJ Reader kind of expressed that he's not been approached by the Bengals about an extension. Well, DJ Reader, not himself, but sources told Kelsey Conway. Are you surprised about that, Patrick? I mean, he's kind of going to be one of those guys that would enter into, if he gets a new contract, he's going to be a guy that's going to be in his early 30s. Right. I mean, and that's kind of one of those kryptonite things right now that this brain trust is saying, we're not doing that because we don't want these albatross contracts and years at the end of a contract where the player's not as productive. So they're shying away from that. But this guy has been just a changer for this team, and this defense.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'm going to go out and say this. I think DJ Reader is the most underrated football player in the National Football League. Now, I might be a little biased when I say that because he doesn't seem to always be in the conversations for, one of the top defensive tackles in the NFL. And I think he is one of those guys because every time he's in there, I mean, my goodness, you've seen the clips where he throws offensive linemen off of him and still makes the tackle. And there's just something about DJ Reader that is so important to this offense or to this defense, But the question then shifts to, well, if you want to pay Burrow, you want to pay Higgins, you want to pay Jamar Chase, there is going to be some of these guys that aren't going to be able to get a slice of that pie. And you do have to start wondering who those guys are going to be. Now, personally, I hope it's not DJ Reader, but, not approaching him yet is sort of a concern.
Yeah, it is. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was going to say it is, and I totally agree with you. DJ Reader is among the most valuable defensive linemen in the league, maybe the best nose tackle, like true nose tackle in the NFL. And no one ever talks about him outside of Cincinnati Bengals fans. When he's in the game, the defense just works differently. There's no running against him, and we saw what he did against Derrick Henry, and it's just amazing what he's able to take on double teams the way that he does. And Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson have found more success over the last couple of years because DJ Reader is occupying so many of those offensive linemen in front of them, freeing them up to play, just to play freer. I used that word way too many times in that last sentence. But he's amazing. I understand, maybe they're worried about, well, we don't want to extend guys and be in their 30s, but they just extended Trey Hendrickson for 1 year. I see no issue extending DJ Reader for 1 or 2 years. I think he'd be 31 if they extend him for 2 years. I think he'll be 30 this year. But on top of all that, there's no depth behind him. I thought maybe they would look at a kind of a nose tackle guy in the draft this year. They didn't. They didn't do anything in free agency. They have Josh Topu. Is it Topu or Tupo? Terrible.
Tupo.
They have Tupo. Yeah, they have Josh Tupo there. But that's about it. And there's a big drop off after DJ Reader if he goes down. But when he's healthy, this defense, Lou Anarumo's system just works much better than when he's not healthy. So keeping him in Cincinnati, I think, is borderline mandatory.
I agree. 100%.
Yep. Well, we talked about how Bengals cornerbacks, rookie cornerbacks, are impressing. One of their veteran guys and a guy who was, he had some ups and downs, but was quietly very important to their success over the past couple of years. Of all places, Eli Apple ends up in Miami with Tyreek Hill after Tyreek Hill just went on this tirade about him. I think it was just last year, right? So now they are teammates. Eli Apple is now a Miami Dolphin, and that is in part the Bengals decided not to pursue Eli Apple because they've kind of invested heavily in young cornerbacks, and they went the Sidney Jones route this offseason. Just went younger. They got younger and potentially even a little quicker, a little more athletic. But Eli Apple is going to the Dolphins in response to the Jalen Ramsey injury. I think that's a meniscus. He had surgery on it, and he's going to miss a bit of time. Probably should be back still at some point this season. But I just thought, more or less, this was just funny. And there's going to be some stuff that's going to have to be worked out here, I would assume. Right? I mean, I don't know how you get past that. I mean, I guess you just kind of laugh it off. I don't know. It's it was an aggressive video.
Yeah. I think I saw Eli Apple tweeted that he spoke with Tyreek Hill in the locker room, and their lockers are maybe across the locker room from each other, and everything's all good. But the first image I saw in my mind when they enter the practice field is just, I don't know if you guys remember, it's a pretty old Seinfeld reference, but when George and Jerry got in a fist fight where they were both wearing the same softball uniform, just that kind of thing. Just how can these two guys work together? But I'm happy for Eli Apple. I really am. I was hoping that the Bengals would find a way to make room for him. I understand why they didn't, with DJ Ivey, DJ Turner in the draft, Chidobe Awuzie, he went on PUP and came off PUP like immediately. There's really no need for Eli Apple, but he outperformed every expectation I think every Bengals fan had for him in his 2 years in Cincinnati. He's a big part of the reason they went deep into the playoffs. When Trey Waynes, when that didn't work out, Eli Apple kind of scooped in and swooped in and saved the Bengals. Absolutely, with our secondary. I thought he was excellent, and I loved the trash talk. I do. I had fun with it. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I think it's all fun for these guys. I don't think Tyreek Hill and Eli Apple are going to have, bad blood after all that. But I will say the Tyreek Hill video was different, to say the least. I don't think anybody was expecting him to go full mode, I owe you, you owe me or something, whatever he said. But no, I think Eli Apple during his time in Cincinnati exceeded all expectations, like Jason said. And I think it's great for him. I think, he really struggled to start his career, and he needed an opportunity to kind of just get his footing back in the National Football League. And I think playing under Lou Anarumo, he did that. And I think he did it successfully. He didn't have massive eye-poppy numbers, but he also wasn't getting cooked every single play. And, you just need one of those guys like that. And Eli Apple did fill that void when Trey Waynes was a disaster. And, and Eli Apple went against Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd in practice. So when I'm seeing Barstool Sports put out how, Eli Apple is going to get cooked in practice by Tyreek Hill, I was like, well, let's not shy away from the fact that he was also going against 3 top receivers as well every day in practice here in Cincinnati.
Yep, and a lot of top quarterbacks, a lot of top talent in the AFC. But, yeah, a guy that and this is also a little bit why I have some hope and some faith in Sidney Jones having kind of a renaissance, right? I mean, he's a former high pick. Good, a lot of good profile to him and his background, and you kind of hope that, hey, the Lou Anarumo effect takes place there, and maybe there's, you're kind of on your last leg in the league, so to speak, or one of your last legs in the league, and so you got to do your thing. We're going to get out of here with just a couple of other pieces of news and notes, and in case I don't know if you guys have seen any of these are just kind of some stories from the AFC North. Patrick Queen is looking, quote, locked in during a contract year. And so he has been a guy that obviously, if you could look back, I mean, that was a guy a lot of Bengals fans wanted if he had fallen to them. And he has had some ups and downs. They've moved him around to kind of make him more comfortable, maybe not overthink some things or overthink what the assignments are. But he is in a contract year, and supposedly he is looking pretty good. The quote here: at the end of the day, I get to play football in the National Football League. So that's a blessing in itself. That was from Patrick Queen himself. Quote, I talked to Harbs, who is John Harbaugh. I talked to Eric. Everything is good and settled right now. I'm not focused on the contract. I'm just looking to play ball. At the end of the day, I get to play football and make my market what I want it to be. I'm not stressing anything. I'm going out there, having fun with my teammates, fun with my coaches. And you see here, Harbaugh believes Queen's mentality and is physically prepared to have his best season. Well, he probably should, but also, guys, as we know, the linebacker market, whether you're an off ball or inside or whatever, it's all over the place. And so, I mean, his teammate just got a huge payday. So, and then Pratt, a guy who's a really solid player, you kind of felt like, man, that was an easier contract to swallow than you would have anticipated, right? So,
sure.
I mean, the linebacker contract market has been all over the place.
Yeah, Pratt's contract was lower than I expected it to be. I actually expected them just to kind of let him test the market and walk because they had to worry about Logan Wilson. They got to worry about T. Higgins. I was very pleasantly surprised that they brought Pratt back. And if they can find a way to hold on to Logan Wilson, they'd keep one of the best duo of linebacker, like especially pass coverage linebackers in the NFL together. But yeah, Queen should have the best. He's got some experience now, we'll see what Baltimore can do with him. I don't know if they can afford him after they signed. I just totally blanked on
Roquan.
Yeah. After they signed him, he signed for
absurd.
Over $100 million. Is that right? Yeah.
I think it was 20 plus mil a year or something like that.
Just
average
nuts.
annual value.
Yeah. Going to Patrick Queen.
Go for it.
No, I was just going to say the one thing about Patrick Queen for me is I loved him at LSU. He was one of those guys that I was really hoping the Bengals were going to pursue. And it was kind of one of those gut punches when he went to the AFC North and he went to the Ravens, who's always had such a tenacious defense. And I really thought he was going to absolutely ball out and just be an absolute force. And I think that this is one of those years where he has really nothing to lose with how he's kind of struggled this season. And that's a scary thing for me to think about after how fun he was to watch at LSU with all the confidence that he had.
And that team was that Tigers team was just absolutely loaded with stars all over the place. I'm just going to go quickly here. This is the Steelers from Steelers.com. Matt Canada sees plenty to be the offensive coordinator sees plenty to build on with the Steelers offense. The quote here, I think if you look at rookies and you talk about picks and those things, other really, really talented players who have gone on to have tremendous careers, their rookie season might not have been great. And I think he's talking about Kenny Pickett in reference to this. And of course, Kenny Pickett, I think they still had a winning season here, obviously, but Pickett didn't have a great statistical season, at least comparative to touchdowns, interceptions, all of that. You see here, you look at having a winning season. There's a lot to build upon. That by no means is good enough. We have to score more points. We have to be more explosive. So he goes on and on here. Patrick, there are big names on this offense. There are some scary names potentially on this offense, but there's also a bit of, I don't know if I want to say underachievement, but I mean, you look at the Chase Claypool. You look at the Chase Claypool thing that didn't work out. Najee Harris is kind of real up and down, and then of course you had some nice flashes from Pickens last year as a rookie. Deontay Johnson has some nice moments too. So I mean, it's just kind of a lot of, like you said, inconsistency, ups and downs.
Yeah, the Steelers are always going to scare me. I don't think that's any secret for anybody. And, I think I saw Kenny Pickett kind of just develop in his rookie season into almost a game manager, to say the least, in his rookie season. And they always have some scary weapons. I think George Pickens has a lot of potential to be a good receiver, especially in the AFC North. But the question is just going to be whether the offense can put it together, because last season we did not see a successful bonding of them putting it all together.
Yeah, the Steelers. This reminds me. The Steelers remind me now of what they looked like in the '90s before Ben Roethlisberger showed up, and they became like an offensive powerhouse. Back when they had Cordell Stewart and the bus, and they just ran the ball all the time, but they played great defense and they were well coached. They have a great defense, great pass rush. T.J. Watt, I think, is maybe the best edge rusher in the NFL, best 3-4 defense or outside linebacker when it comes to pass rushing in the NFL. They have a couple, they have Cam Hayward, who's probably a Hall of Famer, they have good weapons on the outside. They brought in Allen Robinson, but we don't know what he's going to do. I mean, I thought he'd blow up with the Rams, and he didn't. But they brought in Allen Robinson. They have George Pickens, Deontay Johnson. Pat Freiermuth is a really, really underrated pass-catching tight end. It's all going to depend on Kenny Pickett. If he can take – I thought he put some good games together in the second half, and he was efficient. I don't want to say that he, should have won offensive MVP or anything, offensive rookie of the year or anything like that, but he was efficient, didn't make too many mistakes. if he comes in and he builds upon that, and it also depends on their offensive line a lot. So they have some weapons. They got Washington in the draft, which I didn't like seeing that. I was kind of hoping the Bengals would grab him. But we'll see what happens. But I think that of the teams in the AFC North that scare me the most, obviously the Ravens do. But the Steelers and the Browns, I could see both of those teams pushing for a wild card spot. I really could.
Yep, competitive division. I'm not going to go too far in depth in this because this is more kind of a, people. I'll pin this in the live chat here for folks, but this is just more the Browns announced the unofficial depth chart for the Hall of Fame game versus the Jets. And interesting, granted, it's the first preseason game, so it'll probably be pretty ugly. But given the expectations surrounding both these teams, a pretty intriguing game to kick off the NFL preseason here. But you guys can look at this and, oh, by the way, you mentioned quality defensive ends or quality edge rushers in the NFL. There's a really good one right there in Myles Garrett. But there's another one they added on the other side. They added another one on the other side there. So check this out. You can kind of see and get familiar with or refamiliar with the names there. Not a ton of surprises, but some new names and different players on this team. Of course, the great Denzel Ward and Newsome in there on the defensive side of the ball. So you can check that out there. Not a ton to talk about with that, but it is worth mentioning so that people can go and check that out. Well, that's probably going to do it with us, unless you guys have some final thoughts and things that we missed that you feel like we should touch on for this headline show.
I'm just excited. It's the preseason officially starts Sunday. Is the Hall of Fame game on Sunday, I think. And then, the rest of the preseason will kick off next weekend. So it's just exciting. Football's finally back. I love watching the Reds. Patrick, are you in Cincinnati or are you?
I'm in Bowling Green in Kentucky,
Okay.
but I do keep up with the Reds a lot. They've been a lot of fun this year, and they've made the summer go by a little quicker because I feel like when I don't have the Bengals, I'm kind of just sitting here twiddling my thumbs, just waiting for September to roll around. But then you get Ellie De La Cruz and Matt McClain, and all these guys are like, hey, we're here too. And I think all Cincinnati fans desperately needed the Reds to turn it up when they did with how well the Bengals have done.
Yep. I've watched more.
They're fun as hell, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've watched more Reds baseball this summer than I've watched in the last 10 years combined, probably. So I'm just excited they're here to help me, hand it off to the Bengals, and we'll get rolling next week. It's exciting.
Football season, baby.
Yep.
That's right. Well, you see there, Jason can be followed at JasonRG83. I'm at CJ Anthony CUI. The podcast is at Bengals OBI. Patrick, since this is your first time, again, give us a little bit of your background, where people can follow you, find your work, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm a sports anchor here in Bowling Green for the NBC station. I grew up in Lexington, so I grew up just a diehard Bengals fan. Wasn't much to brag about growing up, but here we are in 2023, and I can proudly say that I'm a big Bengals fan. It's really, it's pretty much sports for me. That's all I got, really. I got 2 dogs, getting married in October.
Congrats.
My high school sweetheart. So she's back here somewhere running around.
I saw a figure hovering behind you. Yeah.
So that's kind of the big thing going on. And then, on Twitter, I'm pretty active on Twitter. I'm always talking Bengals on Twitter. At Pat Carey Sports. I'm just there to have fun and keep my passion for Cincinnati alive on there.
Well, thank you guys both for coming on a little bit short notice. Thank you guys. And I know, Patrick, you were also hustling from another gig, but I appreciate you both. You both have been great assets to Cincy Jungle, to our podcast channel and everything. So I appreciate this. Looking forward to doing some more stuff with you, Patrick, particularly in season on the podcast. Looking forward to more shows from you, Jason. And we appreciate what you guys do. We appreciate all the live listeners. We have a lot through the various channels in which we stream. And of course, thank you for watching after the fact or listening after the fact on your favorite streamer. Take care, everybody. We'll be back, at least on this show. We'll be back, John Sheeran and myself, to talk midweek about all kinds of different things. We'll try not to rehash all this kind of stuff, but hey, we like to deep dive into all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, another episode of 3 and Out coming out, as well as some other great shows from Bengal Jim, Matt Minnick, and get all of your news, opinions, analysis, mostly from these guys. I pitch in every once in a while, but mostly from these guys on Cincy Jungle, as well as a slate of other great writers. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you, and we'll have you guys on again soon, and we'll talk some more Bengals and news and all kinds of fun stuff. Hopefully some brighter news. Good God. Hopefully some brighter stuff.
Yeah.
But, hey, we had to talk about it. Take care, everybody.